So what I wanted to talk to you folks about in this video is really to just introduce you to your first assignment, which is the visual narrative essay. And that assignment, a draft of that assignment, is due on Wednesday, January 23rd. So it's going to be coming up quicker than you might realize. And what a draft means, a draft could really be anything, right? Anywhere from a couple paragraphs to, in the case of the visual, you're going to have some either slides or images or those things incorporated. Ideally, though, I would like to see as complete of a draft from you folks as possible. As close to the full page requirement and as close to a fully formed visual composition as you possibly can. The reason is the more that you have, the more I can give you critique and commentary and feedback and kind of give you a sense of what you might need to work on with it. Whereas if I don't have too much, it's difficult for me to say because I don't have a real clear sense of what your vision is of what it is you're trying to accomplish there. So the assignment sheet for that first assignment is, again, under our course here in Gallnet. And if you go to assignment sheets and paper number 1, should open up for you in Microsoft Word. And here we go. So the first part of it, the description, that's all the stuff that's in the syllabus already, so I won't necessarily go through that. But again, just to reiterate, the assignment is narrative-based, so really you're telling a story, right? Stories are one of the oldest and I won't say easiest because it takes a lot of skill, I think, to tell a really good story. But it's one of the oldest forms of communication, of establishing norms and morals and conveying some kind of information to us or just entertaining us. So what you're going to be doing is you're essentially going to be telling a story. You're going to be telling us about an event or a person or a particular place or something that happened in your life that was particularly significant to you, that helped shape you in some way to the individual that you feel you are today, or to where you'd like to go, or the person you'd like to be. So in terms of a story, in terms of the alphabetic stuff, the actual essay that you're more used to perhaps writing, or what you expect when you think of college writing, that is going to be a story. So there's going to be characters. You're going to be a central person, a central character in the story. There might be other people in the story, and telling us about those people. You're going to be using a lot of description. Make us really see, make us really smell, make us really get a sense of the texture of what's happening around you. And then again, giving us a real clear sense through the story, through the way it unravels before us, what the significance or importance of this event was and how it led you to who you are now. And so there's, again, characters. There's going to potentially be dialogue. You're going to be able to use first-person I. That's okay in it. There's going to be a sense of a beginning, middle, and end, a bit of a story arc, right? We start from some place, it builds to somewhere, and we have a bit of a resolution happening. So all those things are going to be prevalent. But I'll talk a little bit more about that again in a second and reiterate some things. But the visual part, I think, is where folks are maybe a little bit more wary or apprehensive. Okay, so the visual essay, the 1 to 2 pages in quotation marks. Again, it might be something that you decide to do like a PowerPoint, and it's going to be over a multitude of slides, right? I mean, pages, constitutes a certain amount of work involved as far as the physical typing and the thinking through it. The same amount of work, I guess you could say, in terms of construction of a visual. So not necessarily just copying and pasting images onto something, but really thinking about the arrangement of those images and the way the images, if you have multiple images, juxtapose against each other, and how that creates meaning. All of those different kinds of things, the balance of text and images, the uses of color. These are the things when we say we're composing visuals that we have to be thoughtful of and considerate of. So this visual essay, it can be any genre, really. I mentioned PowerPoint as one example, but it can really be any genre of both visuals and words. So it could be, a collage that you decide to do. It could be a comic strip. It could be a movie if you're able to do those things, an advertisement, or PowerPoint presentation, scrapbook, and I'll show you a couple examples in a second. Since this is an online class, digital genres are pretty good, and I give a couple examples there, right? Letter pop being one for digital newsletters. Glogster is a really popular one for digital posters. Things that maybe you can incorporate audio as well as video, or you could do something more traditional like PowerPoint. Even though this is an online class, though, let me just reiterate, stress, that you don't necessarily have to do something digital. Would probably be easier as far as the way that you're taking this class, but you don't have to do that. A really strong collage done by hand can be just as effective, just as appealing as something that's digital, where you can do all kinds of bells and whistles and that type of stuff. So here are some suggestions for the visual. The first is that I strongly encourage you to use your own photographs, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, it's just easier. You can manipulate it more as far as editing, cropping things, and you can create multiple copies through the drafting process. You can do that certainly with other images folks have done if you're apt at using things like Photoshop or whatever. But the thing that you run into that won't necessarily be an issue if you use your own photographs is copyright, because if you took them, they're your property. If you borrow somebody else's image, even if it's something from Google Images or something online, that's somebody else's property, right? You have to be aware of that, particularly if you're putting it back online. You could have all kinds of issues with copyright and things pertaining to fair use. So you want to try to use your own images or things that are called free stock photos. So if you just go to Google and type in free stock photos, those are images that don't have a copyright. They're part of public domain, so you could use those. Again, the visual essay should address what you learned. So, what you learned, how you developed into the person that you are today, right? So it could be a skill, a life lesson, a personal value, whatever it is, right? From that event that took place, or that person that you know, or whatever it might be, as well as the feelings surrounding what you learned. And we should get a sense of how that person, place, thing, event contributed again to making that person that you are today. So here's kind of the criteria that I go by, and these are terms that we're fairly familiar with. I have to give some credit where credit is due, certainly here. Some of my colleagues when I worked at Ball State University, Nicole Williams, Haley Sheets, and Elizabeth Murray, have this great piece on basically multimodal compositions and the assessment of those things, and really how the terms that we're familiar with in terms of written essays, like a thesis or organization or development, terms I'm sure you've heard, can be applied to things that are visuals, right? So a thesis and a focus, right? So when I look at the visual that you create, okay, is there a clear point? Does it have a sense of purpose? Is there, that balance between words and images? The organization. Do we have a clear sense of beginning, middle, and end? It is a story after all. And sometimes stories can start in the middle, and kind of build from there, but there's a clear sense of a beginning, middle, and end, or that we're going to somewhere. There's organization. Development, utilizing visual, verbal concepts, right? There's emphasis placed on certain images, that there's a balance among images and words, that there's contrast, that you have effective repetition, that we have a sense of a point of view, all those different kinds of things. The format and design, it's effective. I get a clear sense of, okay, what is this person trying to say? What is the message they're trying to get across? And then, of course, the syntax, the diction, the mechanics, the grammar stuff, that you should still have error-free. There shouldn't be misspellings or awkward phrases unless there's a distinct purpose. So, for example, using slang. That's okay, because, again, you're doing a narrative, you're telling a bit of a story. It's going to be more, perhaps, in your own voice. So that's fine, okay? So that's essentially the visual, okay? And I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. The essay, just as I said, really just you're writing it out, you're telling us the story, right? There's a beginning, middle, and end. You give us rich sensory details because you're not going to have the advantage of, say, a visual, right? So you're going to have to paint that picture for us. You're going to have to present the photograph almost, in the reader's mind, okay? So you have to be really rich in your descriptions and a real clear sense of the flow and where we're going. So very similar concepts. I won't go over too much in terms of the formatting. It's all there. I prefer MLA if you and your discipline that you're studying at Endicott follows APA more. I'm fine with that. I'm familiar with both, pretty proficient in both. So just let me know, just so I'm aware of that. And then we have the due dates. So the first draft is going to be due again on the 23rd. Final draft is later on in the semester, and then you're going to have the opportunity to revise again by the last day of class. Because the more you practice these things, the more you're able to go back, revisit it, revise it, the better it's going to be. Okay. So I want to show you an example, and this example is used with permission. One of my former students said that I could utilize this. So this is a student who she originally was born in Britain, and then she came to the United States with her family, And so the culture shock of that, as well as the things that she experienced here in terms of, for example, meeting her husband and having her children and really loving the place where she is right now, was really what she talked about in the context of hers. And so she decided to do a PowerPoint. So here is that PowerPoint. And you can see, I'm not asking you to use no text whatsoever. I mean, I think what she did here was really nice in terms of balancing between words and images. So here she's got actual text, actual storyline, having that just be emphasized on a single slide, that's totally fine. She goes and she's talking essentially about, American television, and that was her only real exposure to America. And so she incorporates these images. Again, if you're using these images from somewhere else, they're going to be copyrighted somewhere, right? So you want to make sure that you give proper credit to where you got those images from, even if it is Google Images. So you need to have some type of a references slide, per se, images cited, etc. Okay? Again, we get a sense of the narrative. She's going through, she's telling us the story. We still get a sense of description here, too, because she's talking about, how some type of tactile things. So seeing all of that sand, the canyons and earth tones made my tongue dry up like clay. We have that nice bit of language that's being used. More images, some again of which are her own, some of which are, borrowed images. Telling us the story, going through, more of her images. So we get this nice balance here, grandparents. And she goes through. And does yours need to be as long as what this individual did? Not necessarily. Okay, it could be a lot shorter. Again, as I said with the word limits on previous assignments, some folks can be very succinct and get their point across really quickly. Some folks need a little bit more time. So either way is fine. So this is what we have here. I will post this example to GoalNet for you so you can just kind of take a look at it, be able to see it. But this is what I'm talking about here, okay? So this is just one example of somebody that was using PowerPoint, right, which might be the easiest form, the one that you're perhaps most familiar with. Prezi is another great one in terms of presentation software that's available online that you can utilize. So again, we go through, and she's got a nice kind of pattern here of set of images, and then text, set of images and text. So there is a bit of a balance here, and it kind of keeps the flow going throughout as we're going through here. So that was really nice in terms of what she did. Another student, just to show you, another example. I mentioned that it could be something non-digital, right? I had another student that she was talking about this cabin that she lived in when she was just graduated from high school, and so she created this. This essentially is like a scrapbook, and the scrapbook, you can see, it's hard to see maybe, but the cover and what binds it is actually roofing material. So she was talking about this particular place, this cabin, and she decided to make it out of roofing material, and then she kind of went through and did the scrapbook, incorporated images, incorporated some texts. Again, she said I could show this to folks and use this with her permission here. She used other things that were like household materials, right? Again, it's kind of hard to see, but maybe some fabric kind of things, and she would write basically the story on that. So we have this balance of text and images. Then we have wood paneling that she drew on. So I know as far as getting it to me, doing something like this might be a little bit more difficult if you are at a distance from campus, but I'm certainly not opposed to you doing something like that as well. So that's the visual narrative essay. So again, two components. The visual component, which could be any of those things that I mentioned, could be a PowerPoint, could be an actual tactile thing that you create, or something in between, whatever, that you will submit to me, and then an actual paper, right? And so the paper component, the alphabetic essay component, as far as the length, 2 to 3 pages, double spaced. The visual, a little bit more flexibility as far as what form or what that looks like, okay? Again, if you ever have any questions, feel free to contact me, let me know, clarify some things for you, okay? Until next time.